Hey, it's Matt with Sage Landscapes. Today you're going to get some tips and hacks for designing landscapes on large properties. So in general, all these principles we're going to talk about today come down to scale and getting the appropriate scale where things feel curated and designed in your space and it doesn't feel all eclectic and busy with a bunch of small curves, different types of blocks, stuff like that. So material choices are going to be paramount. So we're going to be talking about path materials for primary paths and patios, but also establishing a second type of material for your secondary paths. So a big opportunity with larger properties is you have an opportunity to have multiple destinations in your landscape. And for us as designers, the fun thing about multiple destinations is you can set up multiple types of path materials, so you can establish a primary path to a main destination area or a secondary path to kind of a hidden garden seat or a smaller nook deeper within the garden. The other thing that these paths are going to do on your big properties is break up your spaces. So if you think about these islands you create by putting a path in the middle of something, those islands you can curate to different themes of plant material. You can work with layering of your plants, dividing the space up using your paths. And also don't forget that this is landscaping, so it should look visually interesting. So think about your view sheds, your line of sights. So whether you interrupt a line of sight or not can make a garden feel either a little smaller and cozier by establishing kind of a choke down path with an outdoor room feel, or expansive and wide open for more of a park-like environment, which was the brief for this job that you're seeing right now. So we talked about themes in pathways. These same themes are going to come back in your plant palette. So I would think about establishing a style of planting and a palette that you draw from for the whole property. So you're going to repeat things by mass plantings. You're going to have layers, and think in groups of 3 to 5 that maybe repeat throughout the property. So it feels lush, vibrant, and natural, but there's also this sense of repetition and metering through the space that's going to make it feel more curated and designed. A couple other points here are going to be water and lighting. So both of these are going to be tricks that we can use on a big property to occupy a lot of space with a water feature, or draw the eye out into some of these secondary destination zones that we talked about. So a 2 or 3 watt path light deeper into the woods, drawing you out to a destination that's going to be really inviting in the evening time and encourage that sort of meandering stroll. So with water, on this site, I think we could have doubled the budget for this water feature and even doubled the size, and that scale would still work in this space. It would have given us an opportunity to have 2 waterfalls splitting from a single point and given a much bigger impact. So think about that. Again, with scale, I think on water features, it's easy to go small. In this case, we decided to tuck it in close to the structure, and we went sort of medium size with a double cascade, a bib liner at the bottom to a pondless system. They wanted it to be pondless for safety mostly. Don't be afraid to go big on your water features, and if you establish all this boulder rock work in your water feature, make sure you repeat that boulder work throughout the landscape so it feels more natural. So the boulders in the landscape repeating in the water feature give it more of a sense of place, time, and permanence than if you just had the water feature as like a volcano sticking out of nowhere. So when establishing your destination zones, actually you should know this too. When you're establishing your destinations, have a use case in mind. So in this case, we had our flagstone path led out to another flagstone area under the covered structure. So the covered structure is going to get you out of the rain. There's heaters in there, so you've got a little bit of warmth for morning and evenings, and then you're right next to the water feature, so it's a relaxing sound as well. With those elements added to your outdoor structure, even though it's a simple structure, you've really expanded the amount of use you can get out of that space compared to if it was a bare patio out in the sun. So another thing with these destination zones on a big property, It's good to have big inviting spaces straight out the door. So in our case, we had these boardwalks that we built to connect the decks, but we expanded the deck stairs in width so everything feels inviting and flows straight down to these flagstone patios, because that was the bulk of the work. The permanent patios, these flagstone patios with the fire pit, you've got a clear use area there, but plenty of room for gathering around. Then the boardwalk hitting the hot tub and connecting the other decks, you still have another couple journeys. So for materials in total, we had natural wood deck. That deck had a fascia mounted cable rail. We had natural stone flagstone throughout as our primary patio and primary path. But then we had basalt stepstones, which are a lot rougher and rustic, so you maybe focus on your feet as you journey down the secondary path. And we had a forest patio for our little bistro table with boulders at seating height, and then the garden loop around. And this whole area, we did layered plantings, so eventually that'll kind of enclose those paths a little bit more. Like you see in nature, the large trees give way to sort of understory trees and shrubs. And then once you get to the sunnier spots, you have those perennials, that perennial layer that really gives you that pop of green or flowers or seasonal interest in color. So let's talk about using flagstone on large properties. The thing that you don't want to do on a large property is use a small format brick that looks really busy. It could look like a parking lot. So with these big stand-up flagstone pieces, we have 5 and 6 foot pieces of stone in this patio. And then by nature of this flagstone, we're going to have a variety of shapes. We're going to have, it's natural stone, so there's a variety of color. You have the stone texture, so there's enough interest throughout the patio that it doesn't feel like a repeating pattern like a paver would. So on these big spaces, think larger format on your pavers or use a natural stone if you can afford it in the budget. The other great thing about natural stone is you're not limited to only tight patios like we build. You can also expand the space between the stones, and you can make stepstone paths out of the same material, so it'll feel contiguous with the rest of the space, but you've established these stepstones as kind of your path material, and then your patios are tight together so a chair can move around freely. You can set a table without it rocking much, but then having this secondary path out of the same material, that tone on tone of the repeating color is really nice, especially when broken up with lush perennial plantings on both sides. So there's a few reasons we really love this natural stone. It's a variety of shapes. The colors are interesting throughout. There's the natural stone texture, and it's going to be timeless and last forever. And you can do multiple applications of the same stone. So tight patios, tight paths, step stone paths where they're separated, or you could do stepstones with a gravel in between, stepstones with plants in between. So it gives you a lot more design options when using this natural stone, because you can change the orientation of the paths and start bringing in some other elements which can add to your palette of colors. You can add plants in between, which can break up that hardscape and really soften it up. So depending on the feel you want to go with, natural stone is pretty versatile, but people normally think about it as fairly static and more appropriate in those naturalistic patios. But as you see here, it still works in these modern spaces. It just also has the ability to feel a little more natural once you bring the plantings right up into it and have joints filled with plants or moss that can really soften up the hardscape. So those are some things to think about when hardscaping on large properties. While talking about paths on large properties, don't be afraid of meanders. So these bends in the path, in this case, in the video you're seeing, we had mostly grass that came right up to the path, so it's easy to mow over. But on a big meander, you could open up spots for different size plants. So in a big planting pocket on a bend, you might be able to get away with a small tree, like a Juneberry amelanchier, or you could do a ceanothus shrub, 9-bark, some of these larger shrubs that'll give an anchor point to that bed. And in the spots where the path comes closer into the beds, you can use those layered perennials. When choosing your plant palettes on large properties, don't forget layering. Just like the forest does here, big trees, small trees, shrubs, down to herbaceous perennials, and with that layered impact, you're going to get a great effect throughout the landscape. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. You have been great, and I've been Matt with Sage Landscapes.